From the moment a mine extracts and processes its first ton of ore, it begins the process of going out of business. Long-term sustainability for a mining company depends on replacing ore reserves. Exploration is the lifeblood of the mining business. Hi, George Sanders. I'm the president of Goldcliff Resource Corporation, which is a publicly traded mineral exploration startup. Welcome back to our series of videos where we are introducing to you the publicly traded mineral exploration startup space and offering reasons why the space is highly investable and providing examples of outsized lifestyle changing returns that have been experienced over the decades in this space. In our last video, we walked you through the process of exploration, explaining it was much like any other business activity where we begin with a concept or an idea, and through a number of years and methods of testing, we hope to make a new mineral discovery or new program or new manufacturing technology, robotics, whatever the case may be. Very, very similar. So we think that was pretty straightforward and understandable and easy to follow, but it begs the question, what does that have to do with juniors? Surely the big mining companies who know what their deposits look like because they mine them every day, surely they have the human resources and the financial resources to do all the exploration. Why is there a startup space and how is it important? The short answer is the established mining companies no longer do generative exploration. Of course, there are examples where that's not the case, but generally they have abdicated that role in the mine finding process to the juniors. So what I'd like to do today is just give a brief, very high level, non-detail, not too many examples, overview of how this came to be. I came into the business in the late 1970s, and at that time big mining companies had regional offices, and those companies had like sub-offices in various locations all over North America, and that they did that generative activity. Sometime in the middle or late 1990s, as metal cycles were such that budgets were constrained, the first thing that gets axed or reduced is generative exploration. And so that went on for a little while, the result of which was that many field geologists and exploration executives left the employ of larger mining companies and started out on their own. And I'm sure you can see in the technology space examples in the past of how that happened. So the upshot of that we're still experiencing is that the talent level in the junior company or publicly traded startup space really dramatically improved starting in the 90s and on in through the 2 decades of the 2000s. When I came into the business in the late 70s, most startups were run by salespeople, polite word for stock promoters. And most of them were heavy on sales and not too technically or administratively or financially oriented. That's not the case anymore as a result of so many of the geoscience and engineering professionals leaving bigger mining companies and coming to work on their own in startups. in the 2003 to 2008, China wants everything, commodity boom. There was a real emphasis in the upper levels of the mining industry in growth. And that growth became growth at all costs. In fact, the emphasis was on quantity and not quality. And the result of that was there was a lot of merger and acquisition activity. Many projects that shouldn't have been acquired were, or they were acquired at prices much higher than they were worth. Post-2008, the bigger established mining industry had a more than a decade-long period of rationalization, so exploration budgets were severely curtailed. Attention was put on managing cash flow, paying down debt, disposing of non-core assets, really tightening up operating efficiencies. And so a lot of the normal exploration activity that would happen in a mining company didn't happen there. It was that role was abdicated by accident to the junior space. So that's where we are today. All of the larger mining companies have exploration departments. They have active exploration programs, but those are going on in vicinity, close proximity to existing ore bodies, trying to find replacement reserves, or they are going on newly acquired projects, likely acquired from a startup who has developed an asset or made a discovery. So they're not doing the generative work that we spoke about in the last video. So therein lies an amazing opportunity as the exploration startup space, as individual companies become successful. There is a huge change in the valuation of those companies. This has been aided and abetted in the last 12 months by increasing levels of activity by the larger mining companies in the startup space. About a year ago, we saw a couple of one-off transactions. Over the course of months, that looked like it was establishing a trend, and where we are today, we're seeing activity by established mining companies in the publicly traded startup space, either by outright takeovers for stock or for cash, or stock and cash, or we're seeing those companies make direct investments into the startup company. And what that's doing is it's providing A, credibility for the space, and B, it's providing valuation thresholds. And we think that those valuation thresholds are one of the reasons for the excitement in this space, the enthusiasm in it, and where outsized lifestyle changing returns can be achieved. And I will close around that thought with a very brief personal story. When I was a little boy, 11 or 12 years old, my father, a geologic engineer who was a consultant to a number of mineral startups in those days, he had a big win on one of the stocks that achieved a discovery. And so that year, our family enjoyed a new car, a new house, and most importantly, a family trip to Disneyland, all in 1 year. Now, in the latter part of the 1960s, for a family from suburban Vancouver to take a trip to Disneyland, that was a really big deal. I'm sure my mother was much more impressed with the new house, but for us kids, that trip to Disneyland in those days was really an amazing experience. And now, almost 60 years later, my siblings and I still talk about it. So I'm sure all of you are aware of those kinds of stories in the technology startup space. If you haven't experienced it yourself, you either know someone who did, or you are 1 or 2 degrees of separation from someone who did. But historically, those kinds of returns have been available in the exploration startup space. So we hope you have enjoyed this video. We hope that it's been informative for you, and stay tuned for more in this series.